Welcome to episode 6 of Owl Talks show. So this week we're going to talk about, Kelly, do you want to bring it up? Do you want to bring in the topic?
There's been a lot of discussion, I suppose mostly in the US, about, I think we can name her here, her name is Jerika, and she has made the decision at 14 years old to have her medical treatment withdrawn. That has created a lot of debate among parents and allies, also the disability community themselves.
Effectively ending her life.
That result in her death at the end of it.
Very soon after it.
Well, there's a debate about that too, a debate about her non-natural activity, and there's been quite a number, I suppose, of factual inaccuracies as well within the media, which people have been concerned about as well.
Yeah, we've got 3 very different viewpoints, and we've got 4 very different viewpoints. I can't discount myself, but you guys have. In fact, I was thinking about this as well as we just came on. The 3 of you all have muscular dystrophy, but different types of muscular dystrophy. I think that's the first time we've ever had this on the show. 3 people with 3 different types of muscular dystrophy, congenital Duchenne and SMA type 2. And I think, as we start this debate, it's pretty important to put it out, because we're going to do a second one again with you, Michaela, and 2 other people. But I think it's quite important to put it out there, Michaela, that you have the exact same type of SMA type 2 as this girl does. And you speak about the factual inaccuracies, because I think the factual accuracies are something that, we've always got to get right when we're talking about something as severe as this. I listened to a news report by USA Today earlier today about it, because I've actually stayed away from the news and read people's opinions on stuff and read what people have been saying about stuff. So I just thought I'd go straight to it. The news, they always tell the truth. So I thought...
I'm a journalist, Michaela.
But this is it. USA Today started off and talking about SMA type 2 as something so severe she could barely move her toes. She's pain all over her body every day. And I thought, this is Michaela at age 14. Is that a fact? Is it just like you at 14, or does SMA type 2, does your condition vary so much?
The first thing that we have to say is SMA type 2 is so broad that it's got such a large catchment of people within it. Both me and my sister Martina were both type 2. Arguably, I'm quite a bit stronger than her. Her chest was so bad that they thought she had CF. We all follow a fairly similar trajectory, but Jerika is probably marginally weaker than me. No, more than marginally. I would identify myself as right bang in the middle of type 2 people with SMA. There are a lot of people stronger than me, and there are a lot of people weaker than me that are type 2. Jerika is in the weaker category, but she has had the early onset of chronic pain, which by and large everyone with SMA will experience at some point. Maybe not all at the same time, and maybe not forever, but they will at some point experience some type of it. I myself today got a bottle of amitriptyline, which I'm not going to take. But that's the thing, chronic pain is chronic pain, and I witnessed that with my sister, who has chronic pain in one limb, and I know that it's not the easiest thing to live with. But at 14, I wrecked my hand when I was 14. I completely bandaged it for a while.
Like Dumbledore.
That's why I have a droopy finger. It's not on this hand. This hand's my good hand. But it's really what made me switch from being right-handed to left-handed. So I get that at 14 years old, you're going through a stage where you might not necessarily want this life. And that's a fact for any teenager.
Okay, so in terms of, you can definitely ally to what she was going through. How were there times when you might have felt this way at the age of 14? Because here's the thing: is this a common thing? Have people for years been wanting to end their life at 14, or have they simply not been getting there because medical innovations haven't taken them there? Would we say, well, she wouldn't be alive 20 years ago, and now this is a new thing? As medical interventions come in, people will have to say, I don't want this anymore. What did stuff like this is only, you're what, 25, 26?
26.
I forget ages. This is only 12 years ago for you. What's the 12-year-old Michaela feeling? What's the 12-year-old Michaela feeling about this future girl's decision?
I mean,
And should we trust 12-year-old Michaela?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't trust me at any age.
Not just adult Michaela.
But yeah, I mean, I think at the outset, what I do need to say is that my sister passed away at the age of 14, so 14 is a raw age for me. And I remember when I turned 14 thinking, oh my God, am I going to reach my 15th birthday? And for the whole year, that was what went through my head. You could argue I was seriously mentally ill at that point for a variety of reasons. And certainly it wasn't the easiest of times between maybe the age of 12 and the age of 16. I had a really rough patch during my education. That's a whole other podcast story on its own. We won't go there, but I think the thing to remember, no matter what age you are with SMA, you don't necessarily want to be broken-hearted. I certainly didn't at the age of 13, 14. Want to be lying on an operating table for 3 hours while 3 consultants just poked at me trying to put me to sleep. And I went through that, and I ended up getting stabbed in the neck because they couldn't get me in anywhere. I never went through that.
In that situation, which is very similar to situations that this girl has mentioned and spoken about, when she speaks about having to lie down and then do her homework and lie down and do her homework again, it does make me think, what's she got to do homework for? Like, you know,
but you know what?
Homework if it's,
well, you know what? That reminds me.
Yeah.
Before I had my spinal surgery, I got really, really ill. And I basically lost the breathing function that I have now through my diaphragm. As much as you'll see me move on camera, it's all movement from my diaphragm. Before my spine was done, my shoulders would move, and that was the only way I could breathe. It was just a different muscle. And that created extreme tiredness. So my daily routine was get up at 9, 10 o'clock in the day, go to school if I was lucky for an hour or two. Most of the time I was in hospital, so I would get up at 9 or 10, go to the hospital in the next room to my bedroom, and then go straight back to bed. I'm back to bed about 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon after I top lunch. We'd stay there to 5, maybe 6 o'clock. I'd get up, I'd get something to eat, I'd watch footage straight at 7:30. I'd go back to bed, and I would do it all again the next day. But I actually had some little time to myself. Right, little human time. Most of it was medical, and I understand the pressure that puts you under and the lack of life that can give you sometimes.
Mental pressure.
Mental pressure, and at the end of the day, nothing lasts for me. That's different now. But at the same time, I can't understand. My mum would have beat me out of that bed if I didn't get out of the bed when I could, and that's the lucky part for me.
I look at your situation and the way you are. I see that you vibe off life. You vibe off living. You vibe off facing death in the face and saying, no. I think I see this as, you know, lots of different people in similar situations, but how we react to it and how we react to it differently. And I see it as you know, people are treating this like it's a physical problem, but I see this as a mental problem. Vivek, you speak a lot about mental health through physical disability. You know, you said before it's, you know, mental health something that you've had trouble with and overcome in certain circumstances. You know, how do you analyze this situation as a young man with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, one of the ones which is most beaten down and said, oh, this is terrible? You know.
So, well, the thing is, the point I want to bring up is because she's 14, it seems like quite a young age to make a big decision like this. I think if she was hypothetically like 50 or 60, then I kind of understand it a little bit more. Because a lot of teenagers, even I felt that, oh, I wish I could die, or it's just like a thing you go through, but you kind of work through it and learn to accept or move on with your life, really. Because it's about life, it's not about ending it, really. It's just, it depends on who you have around you and what your environment is like to have people supporting you. But it's difficult to consider this at that younger age.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an able-bodied dude, so you can say, oh, you got nothing to talk about. But I remember being 14, and in fact, I can look at being 14 and 15 and thinking and identifying much later on that probably some, if I had mental health concerns or anything, some of them came on maybe early around that time. Times, and it's an age where you're certainly thinking that you know a lot more than you do, and where you're starting to be treated like an adult and you're being told you're going to make decisions for the rest of your life. And I think that if a lot of power had been put in my hands as a 14-15-year-old, more than I should have done, I don't know what choices I'd have made.
You can make kind of a problem, and you can make mistakes, but with this, if you make a mistake, there's no coming back, really. So it really has to be thought about quite a lot.
Yeah, and I always think, I mean, I can't begin to second guess the what's going on in the head of one person or other people, but I sort of think if when you make this decision, are you making it for the you of yesterday, or for the you of how you feel right now in that moment, or for the perception of who you'll be tomorrow and what you'll be doing and what you'll be feeling tomorrow? And I think that if it's for that latter thought, if it's for how you'll feel tomorrow, then you're never aware of that. You're never going to know. You can guess how you'll feel physically, but certainly mentally and in your mind. I don't know. Steve, you're generally speaking, this is terrible because most comedians suffer severe depression. But Steve, you're a fantastic comedian on YouTube, everything else. You do serious job as well, and lots of good. In fact, you were on HuffPost talking about crypto votes most recently. So in fact, one of the things which I was going to say is what your opinions on in terms of how this is seen by the wider media, how people pick up on it from a disability rights perspective, how people, those normal people view disability. Do you think, I guess, first of all, what are your thoughts? And then second of all, do you think it could have a negative impact on the plight of disability rights?
I'll start by saying this. When I was 14, I had pretty serious back surgery. I had to correct scoliosis. Because if I didn't, that was going to kill me. And the surgery made me really, really sick, to the point where 5 weeks after I got home, I had to go back to the hospital. And on the car ride there, I stopped breathing and literally became within 5 minutes of dying. But in those 5 weeks, when I was home, it really was the only time in my life when I thought about suicide. And not because I was depressed, but I was scared that I was going to have to live the rest of my life in a constant pain and discomfort. But, being on a ventilator after my surgery, it really messed up my throat. So I couldn't eat or drink anything. And I lost so much weight. I actually weighed under 40 pounds.
Okay.
And I had no energy. And I had no strength. But I couldn't sit up. I couldn't lie down. I couldn't sleep at night. I was up every hour. And I just didn't want to live the rest of my life like that. And then, I really saw all the support that I got from my friends and my family. And I thought, I can't let that go to waste. I have so many people around me pulling for me. And they're doing so much for me. And that alone was worth fighting for. And it took literally 5 minutes from death, all the way down, hitting rock bottom to get back. And being 14 years old, I can never have imagined what I'm doing today. I mean, I never thought I'd make it this far to begin with, to be honest. I don't think really anybody did. So in conclusion with that, I get it. I totally get it. I'm not blaming her. However, I'm blaming everyone else. Because, like I said, I got all of that support and love from my friends and my family. And the media is covering this, which really rubs me the wrong way. Something like this shouldn't be publicized at all.
Mm.
But anyway, the media is covering this, but no one's saying, hey, it gets better. You know, you read the comments on the web pages, and everyone say, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, oh, so brave. Where's the people saying, hey, find another option?
Yeah.
You know, and maybe because she's 14, maybe, you know, I mean, yeah, it is a naive decision to make. Just because you're so young. You know, I'm 25, so I'm almost, you know, double what I was when I was 14. And in that time, I've done so much, and my health has improved. She needs to really hear that and see that. I mean, when it comes down to it, she's not getting the help. She probably needs mental help, just for the fact that she's contemplating suicide. And it's obvious that she needs physical help. You know, if she's in that much pain, then let's do something about it. Let's not just say, oh, okay, that's it.
This is where you talk about the news and the media outlets, and I think, man, that's so true. Like, this is being perceived by the media outlets who have a duty to explain the condition properly. This is being put across like multiple sclerosis, I think, where you kind of, it's being deemed as it's terminal anyway, and it's being deemed as, in the USA Today reports, I heard them say most don't make it into their teenage years anyway. And I thought, what? We had Mike Boltman on the other week, who's 50 years old with SMA.
That's just a perception.
This is really important because this is a different story from a 14-year-old girl who only got a year left anyway and she wants to end it early. This is a girl who could live another 10, 30, 40 years, like, but might just experience pain through her life or experience different things she doesn't want to.
And here's the other thing, you know, if you're just like a 14-year-old girl in like the 8th grade and like her boyfriend broke up with her and she wanted to commit suicide, there's no chance in hell that media would cover that. The only difference is that this girl just looks different from everybody else. And, you know, I made this argument last week, and I took a lot of heat for it. But I really think that we do need more cases of quote-unquote inspiration porn. I really think that we do need more stories, people with disabilities, doing things that able-bodied people do. Obviously not with this spin.
So you're saying inspiration porn, we want more, or?
Yes. Because I think people need to see that people with disabilities can do anything and everything able-bodied people do.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think the average person understands that.
No.
And I know there's so many people in the disability community who are doing so many big things. You know, they're teachers, they're lawyers, they're advocates, and they're living into old age. But the vast, vast majority of your average citizen just doesn't get that. And they don't get that people with disabilities go out of their houses, go shopping, school, and do the things that everybody else does. You know, obviously, you know, you don't want the derogatory, like, pity tone and slant on it. I really think that we need more stories of just disabled people doing things and just shove it down people's throats until they say, okay, I get it, they're just like us.
Yeah.
And that way, we won't be treated differently.
Yeah. Vivek?
Yeah, I really believe that as well, because personally, I find it's a type of the mindset you have. If you think you want to do something, you should be able to do it regardless of if you're disabled or not, because there's a lot of disabled people that can do things that are sometimes even better than even able-bodied people.
Yeah, I think, Steve, on your point, there definitely is one rule for so-called normal people, and then one rule, oh, well, she's disabled anyway, you know. It really does seem like there is that division in the mindset of people who can't relate to disability.
Not at all.
Yeah. But I also see it's quite interesting because it's beautiful and wonderful to hear all three of you give very, very sort of, no, this is probably something we don't agree with, because that was my viewpoint. But as I was thinking through viewpoints, I was thinking, could there be ways I might think around this? And I was sort of thinking, this is actually kind of a problem that it might not be, but I feel like it might be something like a new problem that's going to arise as medical advances take place. For example, you, Steve, were saying that you had life-saving surgery when you were 14 and thought these things. That wouldn't have happened 50 years ago. Vivek, you have Duchenne. You know, you had life big surgery when you were 15. Michaela, and these are things that, like, we as humans, and it's. I found, here's another point to it. I found it ironic. You know, the parents who want to push, I want my child to live as long as possible. So I want cures and treatments for everything. That this is actually the product of this, that she's able to live, you know, and continue to live, but actually she's kind of flying in the face of that by what we might think weirdly saying, you know what, no thanks. Maybe, Vivek, you know, going back to your point of, you said if she's 50 or 60 it's a different thing. I think my point, it really is that she's 14, that at 14 you don't understand the world, people, life, humanity, the meaning of most things, and I think I'm sort of thinking, where's the middle ground? You know, I think we've got to do all we can for people. You know what, I'd say if she was 18 it would be a completely different thing. Would you guys say?
The thing about being 14 is that, like you said, you just don't have the experience. You know, they always say 18. You know, you're allowed to vote. You're allowed to sign up for the military.
You can get drunk in England.
Well,
That's right, because I was thinking about an age. I was thinking, actually, the latest age we have in this country for anything is 18. So, and I think, you know, in terms of, you're seen as an adult at 18. If you want to commit suicide in this world at 18, it's not seen as a mental impairment in the same way it would be if a 14-year-old wanted to commit suicide. And that's the thing that I think is really worrying here. She's 14, she's a child, and everyone's going, oh yeah, that's cool, we'll throw her a prom. That really worries me, you know?
But you know what I think worries me the most is the fact that actually the narrative that surrounds it is so celebratory. That's what concerns me. Most people are almost lifting this up and championing it as an example of everything that's right with the world.
And in fact, if I may, that's why, you know, I just said a little bit about why I was trying to see it might be okay. And I think the reason I think I could come to terms and go, okay, if this is absolutely how you feel, is because if it's a one-off isolated incident, and it's just happening over there, and it's because this person just feels that way and it's everything, then maybe okay. But the fact that the media is reacting in the way that it is, it then gives it the potential to seem like it's normalcy, to seem like everyone else is going to be, you know, if I was 13 with what this girl has, I would be paying attention. And people, you know, you'd be perceptive in that state.
Let's not forget, this is the second high-profile story already this year. It's becoming like a recurring thing now. And I'm really afraid that it's just going to keep happening. more.
Yeah, I think for me, what I do want to say is that I don't really have an opinion over whether Jerika is right or wrong. It's her decision to make. That's final. However, what does concern me is the circus that happens around that, and it is becoming a circus. It's the fact that she has the power now to impression other young men and women, other young boys and girls, really, with all types of disabilities, not just SMA, not just neuromuscular conditions, but all types of disability, to say, hey, you don't have to live this way. And yeah, you don't. At what point is this ableism? At what point is this not just simple, I don't want to live like this? At what point is this impression from somewhere else? And if it is being impression from somewhere else and it isn't an inert need to escape, then that's where my concern ends in. And, Jerika's decision is Jerika's decision. And I won't say it's right or wrong because it's not for me to say. But what it is for me to say is that if that then in turn impressions somebody else to make the same decision, then we've got a problem.
Could I just say one thing? The thing about death is everybody will die in the end somehow. So I think they're talking about it this way, death isn't just for disabled people, really, for everyone. But this kind of narrative kind of shows that it's all right for disabled people to die, but able-bodied people at that age, they don't have any stories of that. Really, so you can't just, that's my closing statement, really.
And that's the thing for me. I don't think we should be making any difference between, disabled, well, maybe then, not disabled, what are you doing? You're crazy.
Yeah.
And as Steve says, physical pain, that needs to be managed. For me, I think the idea of physical pain is the sole thing behind this, and that's something that really needs to be taken seriously. I don't know, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care what she has. I don't care if she has SMA, if she's blind, deaf, whatever. All it comes down to is that she has a disability, she's in pain, and she's only 14 years old. And if it was a 14-year-old in pain without a disability, we wouldn't be talking about this.
Well, we would. It'd be like, what?
No, that too. But one thing that I think the broader population just needs to take a step back and say people with disabilities are just like everybody else. Because every single person on this planet has something wrong. They go through whatever kind of adversity. The only difference with me, Vivek, Michaela, is that our problems are on the outside. And that's what makes everyone say, "Aw," but that's our life. We don't know any different.
I said, that's something I've always said. I don't know another life. There's been a lot of discussion over another case in the UK, which we'll not talk about now, where a court intervened, and that someone said to me, that's better for the child. And I said, but that child doesn't know what that is. He doesn't know what your life is on 2 feet. He only knows his life now, and he will not understand that normal is deemed by society to be different, and that's all it is. Normal is deemed by society to be different than what I am, or what Vivek is, or what Steve is. And you forget that normal is subjective, it's not objective. It's not the same for everybody.
Yeah. And
that concerns me too, and that's another sphere to this, and really forget that normality is different for everybody. My normal even my normal isn't Vivek's normal or Steve's normal.
Yeah. Guys, thank you for this discussion. This is obviously something that we're going to keep talking about on Muscle Out and keep pushing out, and maybe discuss in the future, because I think it's something that we need to keep making people aware of, that it really is a serious issue that I think does need to be addressed. Is media representation of issues like this and public perception of issues like this really quite worrisome. But yeah, anyway, a strange end to our vidcast, but much lighter notes next time around. We'll see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.